I'm a volunteer with Pawsitive Match Rescue Foundation in Calgary.
I'm Tara, and I also volunteer with Pawsitive Match. I'm the transport coordinator.
I'm Chelsey, and I'm also a volunteer with Pawsitive Match. I'm the catering coordinator. And the three of us traveled to Cancun, Mexico in January 2012 for a Spay Neuter clinic that was put on by CANDI International.
They sponsored it financially as well as with volunteer support. They have a number of shelters that they consider to be their humane partners. So there's Isla Animals on Isla Mujeres. It's an island just off of Cancun. They work with the Cozumel Humane Society. They work with Tara Animals, and his name is Ricardo, who runs that shelter. So those are the three main ones that they work with down there. The other partner was VIDAS. They are a group of vets and vet techs that get together, and they go down to lots of different places, but in Mexico particularly, and they're the ones who basically are doing all of the spay and neuter. So they will bring in dogs, round up dogs from the street, as well as have people bring in their dogs who maybe they can't afford to spay or neuter them or don't have access to a vet.
The dogs would come, the vets would take them in, do the surgery, then they'd come around to the other side to recovery, and that's where we ended up working most of the time. Basically, the dogs would be brought around, they'd still be intubated, and we'd have to take the tubes out, take their IV out, wake them up, and we would trim their nails, clean their ears, just little things.
The street dog situation in many parts of Mexico is really different from in Canada or in the US. Partially because of the weather too, because it's so warm. They tend to have a lot of dogs that live outdoors and can live outdoors, whereas obviously in Canada with our cold it wouldn't work that way. Because there isn't the same education around the importance of spay neuter, as well as the vetting needs for dogs down there, nor is there the access to a lot of veterinary care, both because there aren't a lot of vets around, and also financially it can be too expensive when you're going between vetting your dog versus eating. For some people there's a lot of poverty in Mexico. There tend to be quite a number of dogs down there in really poor health conditions a lot. There's a lot of dogs that you see with really bad mange, and usually it's from a combination of things, including malnutrition being one of the most important things that lead to mange. You see lots of dogs going around limping or that have had broken limbs, so you'll see one of their legs has healed in a different direction, and they make do, they manage, that's the life that they know. There definitely are people in Mexico that take very good care of their dogs as well, but it's not necessarily, they're not necessarily seen as the domestic kind of animals, how we see dogs here. A lot of times too, unfortunately, they're not treated with that much respect either. You'll see people kicking dogs, you see people throwing stones at them, trying to get them to go away. They just see them a bit more as a nuisance. If they're owned, it's one thing, but if they're a street dog, then they're constantly scrounging for food, and they're usually very sickly, and they don't tend to live very long, maybe a couple of years at most. Seeing a senior dog on the streets in Mexico is almost unheard of. They don't get to be that age ever. And a lot of the dogs that we were finding were puppies. The majority of the puppies I would say that we found or that were brought to the clinic were without their mothers. There's some of them found in the garbage, so people were trying to get rid of them really young. There were ones that were found under a stairwell. There was all sorts of different situations, and in lots of different health conditions as well.
So one of the things that I got to do when we were down there is go out with a couple of the people and catch some street dogs. So there's just a bunch kind of by this mechanic shop. So they set up like a live dog trap and tried to lure them in with food, and you could tell the dogs were hungry. They would come, but then they would back away, and they would come, they would back away, and then they got some meat or some kind of food, and then all the dogs ended up going in. And then they trapped them down, like probably 3 or 4 in the live dog trap, and then they just put them in the back of the truck, bring them to the clinic, and spay or neuter them, and then I think they held them overnight, and then release them the next day back into the street.
So Pecora, who I'm holding here, is actually from Cozumel, so that's close to Cancun, and she was in the shelter in Cozumel. And I don't know too much about her her own history, but she's a very typical Mexi-looking mutt who very likely lived on the street at least at some point in her life. I think she'd been at the shelter for a couple of months. So she's one that, I brought her into my house and she'd never seen stairs before and was very, very freaked out by them. Had never been in a car loose before, for sure, so just having very different experiences here than obviously she'd had in Mexico. We brought back 8 dogs when we came back from Cancun, and Chelsey brought back 4 when she came back, so we brought back 12 in total from the clinic.
Ways that you can help if you're interested, by donating to any of those associations we talked about earlier. You can also foster dogs. We can't bring the dogs out without having a foster, so we really need more fosters, people who are willing to take the dog into their home, keep them until they're adopted, possibly bring them to events and things like that, get them out there so that people can meet the dog and adopt it. Also just volunteering with us and helping us rescue all these dogs. There's lots of different opportunities within our rescue, so go to our website and fill out an application.